In the village of Otutu, there lived a young man named Ikenna. Ikenna was an orphan who lived alone in a small hut. His only living relative was his old grandmother, who lived in a neighboring village called Iroku. Every market day, Ikenna would visit his grandmother. One day, after visiting her, she gave him lots of dried meat and foodstuffs. The bag he carried was heavy, so he walked slowly. By the time he reached Otutu, he was exhausted. He tried to fetch water from the pot, but it was infested with ants. He had no choice but to go to the stream. That night, he hurried to the stream and began to fetch water when he felt a touch. He turned and saw a mermaid. She introduced herself as Aza, smiled at him, and warned him not to tell anyone about her. That night, Ikenna returned home and couldn't stop smiling until he fell asleep. However, the next morning, his joy turned to sorrow as he found his belly swollen. Confused and scared, he felt something kicking inside him. He stayed indoors, eating the dried meat from his grandmother's place until it ran out. After several days, with no more food, he had to sneak out to find sustenance. One day, while picking fruits, a palm wine tapper spotted him. The tapper spread the news, and soon the whole village knew. People whispered, pointed fingers, and elders exchanged concerned glances. Villagers visited Ikenna's house to see the pregnant man, which embarrassed him deeply. The news spread to neighboring villages, drawing even more attention. The elders of Otutu eventually summoned Ikenna for questioning. Silent and frightened, Ikenna sat before them. They gave him 5 days to provide an explanation, threatening banishment if he couldn't. That night, Ikenna went to the river, crying and asking why this burden had been placed on him. Aza appeared, reassuring him she would defend him, preventing his banishment. Bibit was sitting on an overturned and empty cask, close by the gate of the barricade. A small detachment of Citoyen soldiers was under his command. The work had been very hot lately. Bearing the child inside Ikenna a blessing, not a curse. She warned the villagers and elders, who immediately sent Ikenna home and apologized, honoring him with a chieftaincy title. The entire village celebrated Ikenna, bringing gifts and delicacies. His grandmother cared for him, and Ikenna found happiness again, feeling the life inside him. One rainy night, Ikenna experienced his first contraction. With his grandmother's help, he gave birth to a daughter with skin like the sun. The village rejoiced, celebrating their warrior child. They held a grand feast, dancing and singing. Aza appeared again, naming the daughter Iroku after the strong Iroku tree. Iroku grew up unlike any other child in the village, always fierce and strong, feared by other children. By age 5, she was already a warrior, fighting older children and earning praise from villagers. Meanwhile, Ikenna felt lonely after his grandmother passed away. He started visiting Aza at the river, spending time with her and longing to meet her people. Despite her reluctance, Ikenna persisted, yearning to see Aza's sisters and mother. When Iroku turned 18, a war threatened Otutu from the neighboring village of Ikuku. With the king's blessing, Iroku organized the village warriors, leading them fearlessly into battle. Otutu triumphed, and Iroku returned as a champion, celebrated by all. However, Iroku remained troubled by her father's absence. She confronted Ikenna, who had been visiting Aza. He had gone with Aza and her sisters, marrying Aza and living underwater. Despite Iroku's anger and battle with Aza, she brought Ikenna back to Otutu, but he was deaf and mute, forever changed by his time with Aza.